The Billy the Kid imposter hoax of Brushy Bill Roberts is a Cinderella story for men, with a nondescript old coot emerging as the prince of outlaws. This fairy tale was created by Brushy Bill, William V. Morrison, who coached him, and C.L. Sonneshan, who authored their 1955 book, Alias Billy the Kid. 70 years have added more authors, publicizing movies, and Dupes parroting the hoax's 22 core fables. All rode on Billy the Kid's fame, begun in his lifetime with outlaw propaganda by New Mexico Territory's corrupt Santa Fe Ring, which Billy had fought with his fellow regulators in 1878's lost Lincoln County War, and then by his letters seeking a governor's pardon, and by his testifying in courts against ringites, while guerrilla rustling from them. Billy's heroics and escapes ended with his fatal ambush at 21 by lawman Pat Garrett.
Fable 1.
Brushy Bill Roberts was Billy the Kid.
In Brushy world, dupes cling to Brushy's fiction and see critics as conspiring against their man, as born on December 31, 1859 in Buffalo Gap, Texas. In reality, according to his family, Oliver Pleasant Brushy Bill Roberts was born in Bates, Arkansas on August 26, 1879, so under 2 at Billy the Kid's July 14, 1881 death. Mentally disturbed and a farm laborer, Brushy didn't leave home till 21, though still cared for by family and 4 wives. Brushy believed he was various Old West characters, like Jesse James's dead brother, Frank, in addition to Billy the Kid. He was coached and promoted by profiteering charlatans, William V. Morrison and C.L. Sonneshan, who wrote his posthumous 1955 book, Alias Billy the Kid.
Fable 2.
Brushy Bill's name was William Henry Roberts.
In Brushy world, he was William Henry Roberts, and the name Oliver Roberts was his identity theft from his dead younger cousin Ollie Roberts to hide being Billy the Kid to explain why his stated age was too young for Billy the Kid. In reality, Brushy, William V. Morrison, and C.L. Sonneshan faked Oliver P. Roberts's William Henry name from what was just Billy's alias, William Henry Bonney, because his actual Henry McCarty birth name was still unknown. Also, in 1935, Brushy changed his name to Oliver L. Roberts, and his birth date to December 31, 1868, to age himself dishonestly for Social Security benefits. And the cousin Ollie lie was a response to critics revealing Brushy was too young to be Billy.
Fable 3.
Billy the Kid was Brushy Bill's alias.
In Brushy world, Billy the Kid was his childhood nickname, so William V. Morrison and C.L. Sonneshan named their 1955 book backing him Alias Billy the Kid. In reality, Billy's hated Billy the Kid moniker was created in the 1878 Lincoln County War period by his Santa Fe Ring enemies to label him as an outlaw murderer, since he'd become an anti-Ring zealot after the Ring murdered his beloved Ring competitor, merchant rancher boss John Tunstall.
Fable 4.
Brushy's family tree proves he was Billy the Kid.
In Brushy world, Brushy had a time-regressed family tree with a mean Confederate soldier, rancher father, James Henry Two-Gun Roberts, mother, Mary Adeline Dunn, and himself as William Henry Roberts. At his mother's death, her half-sister, Catherine Ann Bonney, takes him to Silver City, marries an Antrim, and dies. In 1988, William A. Tunstall, in his Billy and Me Were the Same, added a branch with a dead younger cousin Ollie, having parents H.O. Roberts and Sarah Elizabeth Ferguson, who Brushy tricked into thinking he was Ollie. The real family tree was provided in 2015 by Brushy's family member, Roy L. Hawes, in his book, Brushy Bill, proof that his claim to be Billy the Kid was a hoax. Roy's mother, Elaine Hawes, had been tricked by William A. Tunstall into backing the fictional cousin Ollie Branch. And Henry Oliver H.O. Roberts and Sarah Elizabeth Ferguson were actually Brushy's parents. H.O. Roberts, a kindly dirt farmer, had 2 marriages, first to Caroline Dunn, yielding 2 daughters, with Roy L. Hawes's mother descended from one. After Caroline Dunn died, H.O. Roberts married Sarah Elizabeth Ferguson, with Brushy 3rd of their 8 children. Brushy's full brother Tom was one of his caretakers, as was Tom's daughter Geneva Roberts Pittman, who, in 1987, was the first family member to expose Brushy as an imposter.
Fable 5.
William V. Morrison was an attorney who represented Brushy Bill.
In Brushy world, expertise and authority are faked to impress dupes. In reality, William V. Morrison was a car parts and copier machine salesman with a side hustle of promoting Old West imposters while impersonating an attorney. Through his Jesse James impersonator J. Frank Dalton, he met Dalton's friend, Brushy Bill Roberts, then endorsing Dalton as Jesse James. Morrison took on Brushy with the publicity-grabbing stunt of requesting real Billy the Kid's pardon, refused by Governor Lew Wallace, from the current New Mexico governor. In preparation, Morrison then coached and toured Brushy to historic sites. But at the November 30th, 1950 hearing, Governor Thomas Jewett Mabry declared Brushy an imposter, and Brushy died the next month. In 1955, Morrison with C.L. Sonneshan published Alias Billy the Kid.
Fable 6.
Charles Leland C.L. Sonneshan was a Harvard-educated historian of the Southwest.
In Brushy world, expertise and authority are faked to awe dupes. In reality, C.L. Sonneshan was a state college English teacher whose Harvard Ph.D. was on 1600s British writers. Also an amateur historian and avid Historical Society joiner, Sonneshan envied the new Billy the Kid historians. Ignorant and dishonest, he wrote Morrison's 1955 Brushy backing book, Alias Billy the Kid. Becoming the Dupes' Bible, it had a fixed-up, already dead Brushy and conspiracy theories rationalizing Brushy's rejection by historians.
Fable 7.
Brushy Bill had special Billy the Kid knowledge.
In Brushy world, his insider knowledge proved he was Billy the Kid. In reality, Brushy primarily lifted from his day's two fictionalized books. The 1927 edition of Pat Garrett's 1882 The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid, and Walter Noble Burns's 1926 The Saga of Billy the Kid, repeating their errors. William V. Morrison coached him with real Billy's letters, though Brushy's crude grammar, like, "I done wrong like everyone else in those days," required lying that Billy's so-called friend wrote these articulate missives. Also, Morrison toured Brushy and historic sites like Lincoln, but with most Billy the Kid history still undiscovered like Billy's childhood, deposition, court testimonies, and Secret Service pursuit, Brushy's fantasized filler had fatal mistakes. And Billy spoke Spanish like a native. While there's no sign, Brushy spoke it.
Fable 8.
Brushy was illiterate, so couldn't study up for impersonation.
In Brushy world, obvious cribbing from sources had to be denied. In reality, Brushy was literate, read up for his impersonations, and kept notes and a diary which his promoters, William V. Morrison and C.L. Sonneshan, carelessly cited in their 1955 book, Alias Billy the Kid, while claiming his illiteracy. Also, illiteracy mismatches literate real Billy. Henry Hoyt witnessed Billy's writing, for him, an October 24, 1878, bill of sale for a horse. Billy also referred to reading, like the note from Ringite Commander Dudley, given to him by Alexander McSween for his opinion during the Lincoln County War siege, or a Las Vegas Gazette article calling him Outlaw Billy the Kid, which he criticized in his December 12, 1880 letter to Governor Wallace.
Fable 9.
Brushy matched Billy the Kid physically.
In Brushy world, he was left-handed, slipped handcuffs over little hands, and had buck teeth and multiple scars. And a 1990 photo comparison to the tintype by Scott Acton proved a match. In reality, left-handedness came from ignorance that Billy's tintype was left-to-right reversed. Shackle slipping wasn't done by Billy. Brushy's friend, DeWitt Travis, swore in an affidavit that then toothless Brushy had his overgrown canine teeth pulled, not incisors like Billy's buck teeth. And Brushy's family said his scars were from farm labor. And Acton faked the match by retouching Billy's tintype to match Brushy. The 1989 legitimate Lincoln County Heritage Trust photo comparison proved no match.
Fable 10.
Brushy's pardon hearing as Billy the Kid with New Mexico's governor was unfair.
In Brushy world, Brushy's rejection as an imposter for Billy the Kid's pardon was a conspiracy to hide his being Billy the Kid, achieved by ignoring William V. Morrison's evidence packet proof. In reality, on November 30th, 1950, before Governor Mabry, historians, historical families, and the press, Brushy looking too young for 91, forgot his lines, denied killing anyone, forgot Pat Garrett's name, and made up that his friend, supposedly shot as Billy the Kid, went to the Maxwells for meat because Fort Sumner's restaurant was out of steak. He was an obvious imposter, and Morrison's so-called evidence packet contained just his error-filled Billy the Kid history, some real Billy documents, his seeking Billy's coroner's jury report in the wrong place to fake its non-existence, and 2 affidavits by non-historical people swearing Brushy was Billy.
Fable 11.
Affidavits of Lincoln County War participants proved Brushy was Billy the Kid.
In Brushy world, people who knew Billy the Kid swore Brushy was Billy. In reality, William V. Morrison got no historical family's participation. Instead, he used 5 random old-timers, signing affidavits he largely wrote, which C.L. Sonishin put in their 1955 book alias Billy the Kid. Severo Gallegos as a child saw Billy's Lincoln jailbreak and, as an old-timer, made up helping him. Texan Martille Abel fantasized that Billy visited her and her husband at an undisclosed location in 1902. New Mexican Jose B. Montoya had Billy visiting his Carrizozo family and shooting quarters and claimed seeing him in a 1902 bullfight in Mexico. Texan DeWitt Travis, Brushy's friend, just believed him. Louisiana's Robert E. Lee, Brushy's fellow Old West impersonator, simply vouched for him.
Fable 12.
Pat Garrett was dishonest.
In Brushy world, Brushy backing W.C. Jameson, in his 2012 book, Billy the Kid, The Lost Interviews, called Garrett dishonest, a debtor, an adulterer, a drunk, an inveterate gambler, and a liar, as proof he lied about killing Billy the Kid. In reality, Garrett was one of Santa Fe ring boss Thomas Benton Catron's hitmen to eliminate opponents, like Billy, though glorified by Ring and Secret Service elevation to sheriff and deputy U.S. Marshal. And moral rectitude isn't a hitman prerequisite. In Texas, Garrett had murdered teenage Joe Briscoe in 1876, and possibly a black man. In 1896, Catron made Garrett Doña Ana County Sheriff to kill his political and ranching rival Oliver Lee, though Garrett failed. And Garrett's 1908 killer, his tenant Wayne Brazel, got off on self-defense because Garrett was about to murder him. So in reality, Garrett was a good choice for killing Billy Bonney, and he did.
Fable 13.
Pat Garrett was out of his jurisdiction.
In Brushy world, William V. Morrison claimed that, as Lincoln County Sheriff, Garrett lacked authority in San Miguel County's Fort Sumner, so couldn't have gone there to kill Billy. In reality, Garrett had the jurisdiction. It's just that Billy's Secret Service pursuit was still undiscovered in Brushy's day. Garrett had been backed for his November 1880 sheriff's election by the Santa Fe Ring, which recommended him to the Secret Service for Billy's pursuit. Special Operative Azariah Wild appointed Garrett as a deputy U.S. Marshal for territory-wide jurisdiction to hunt Billy. Later, Brushy hoaxers lied that the appointment was invalid because Wild had gotten 2 appointments for a John Hurley and put Garrett's name on one. But Azariah Wild's January 3, 1881 report documented that to the Secret Service chief, meaning it was approved.
Fable 14.
The killing night was dark and moonless.
In Brushy world, Brushy claimed the dark night to explain how his look-alike pal, Billy Barlow, was shot as mistaken for him as Billy the Kid. In reality, the near full moon on the killing night of July 14, 1881 made Fort Sumner almost light as day. Hoax creators, William V. Morrison and C.L. Sonishin, hid Brushy's fatal error in their 1955 book, Alias Billy the Kid, forging his words as, "I ran through the gate into Maxwell's backyard in the bright moonlight," even titling the chapter, Death by Moonlight. But Brushy, believing W.C. Jameson and Frederick Bean in their 1998 book Return of the Outlaw, Billy the Kid, presented Brushy's actual transcript claiming darkness, with the quote, "Garrett knew by now that he'd killed the wrong man in the dark." But Jameson later became a hoaxer and switched to bright moonlight for his 21st century books.
Fable 15.
Deputy Poe said Garrett killed the wrong man.
In Brushy world, Deputy Poe tells Pat Garrett he killed the wrong man, meaning Brushy was surviving Billy the Kid. In reality, this is a partial quote. John William Poe, one of Garrett's two deputies, didn't know Billy. He wrote in his 1933 book, The Death of Billy the Kid, that, on July 14, 1881, when Billy entered Peter Maxwell's bedroom, where Garrett was already, he thought Billy was Maxwell or his guest. So when Garrett emerged saying he'd got the kid, Poe first responded that it was the wrong man. But Poe continued, "Upon my saying this, Garrett seemed to be in doubt himself as to whom he had shot, but quickly spoke up and said, 'I am sure that was him, for I know his voice too well to be mistaken.'" This remark of Garrett's relieved me of considerable apprehension. Poe then confirmed Billy's identification by Maxwell and by the townspeople, who took Billy's body for a wake in their carpenter's shop.
Fable 16.
The corpse was hidden by Garrett.
In Brushy world, Garrett hid the dead non-Billy victim, though Brushy's own version, in the 1955 book Alias Billy the Kid, had his look-alike pal, Billy Barlow, passed off as him, as Billy the Kid. In reality, Billy's body was given to Fort Sumner's 200 townspeople for a nighttime wake in their carpenter's shop, and was also identified by Peter Maxwell, family servant, Deluvina Maxwell, and the coroner's jury for their July 15, 1881 report. The hidden corpse is from W.C. Jameson and Frederick Bean's 1998 book, Return of the Outlaw Billy the Kid. It used their June 25, 1991 interview with Alias Billy the Kid's fuzzy-headed author C.L. Sonneshan, who forgot Brushy's identical pal tale and told them that Barlow may have been half Mexican, so didn't look like Billy. Sonneshan was garbling Grant County's Singleton M. Ashenfelter, 260 miles from the Fort Sumner killing, faking in his July 23, 1881, the New Southwest newspaper, a bearded corpse Billy who'd stained his skin to look like a Mexican.
Fable 17.
No photo was taken of the body.
In Brushy world, this meant Pat Garrett hiding the non-Billy corpse. In reality, primitive little Fort Sumner, where Billy was killed on July 14, 1881, had no photographers, and people didn't own cameras back then. And Billy's body was identified by the 200 townspeople at his nighttime wake in their carpenter's shop, by Peter Maxwell, by family servant Deluvina Maxwell, and by the 6 coroner's jurymen for their July 15, 1881 report.
Fable 18.
There was no coroner's jury report for Billy the Kid.
In Brushy world, there was no coroner's jury report, so Billy wasn't killed. In reality, Billy's July 15, 1881 coroner's jury report states it was sent by its writer, Justice of the Peace Alejandro Segura, to the District Attorney of the 1st Judicial District, meaning William Breeden, in Santa Fe, in whose papers it was found in 1932. Since it ended Brushy's survival hoax, William V. Morrison faked its non-existence by seeking it in Segura's Las Vegas, New Mexico papers, where it wasn't, forging it for his 1955 book, Alias Billy the Kid, by changing District Attorney of the 1st Judicial District, identifiable as Breeden, to just Attorney of the 1st Judicial District, meaning nothing, and by using an April 2, 1936 letter by A.P. Paco Anaya to New Mexico magazine, making up 2 reports, a lost original where he was a juryman, and a second one by Pat Garrett, which Morrison pretended was the known one. But Anaya, who knew Billy in Fort Sumner, wrote a 1991 memoir, I Buried Billy, proving himself a liar. Also, Garrett couldn't have written the known report since it's in Segura's technical legal Spanish.
Fable 19.
Pat Garrett didn't get the Billy the Kid reward immediately because the body wasn't identified.
In Brushy world, the non-Billy body is always hidden. In reality, the reward was offered by Governor Lew Wallace in December 22, 1880's Las Vegas Gazette, and in May 3, 1881's Daily New Mexican. On July 15th, the day after killing Billy, Garrett sent his reward request letter to the current governor, with attached copy of the coroner's jury report proving Billy as victim, though acting Governor William Rich processed it, because Governor Lionel Sheldon was away. On July 21, 1881, Rich wrote in the Executive Record Book that he'd been legally advised by the report's recipient, District Attorney and Attorney General William Breeden, that Wallace's reward was just his private offer, so payment's suspension, meaning delay, was needed for a legislative act to convert it to a territorial reward for payment from territorial funds. That occurred on February 18, 1882, and Garrett got the money.
Fable 20.
In Brushy's life after the killing, he used aliases.
In Brushy world, Brushy's, quote, copious notes were used by C.L. Sonneshan for his post-killing life in 1955's alias Billy the Kid. Included were staying in Mexico with Yaqui Indians, working on cattle drives, getting arrested and let off as Billy the Kid in Kansas City, guarding stage lines, being a Pinkerton detective, working with hanging Judge Parker, being a deputy U.S. Marshal, confronting the Dalton gang, winning $10,000 for riding Bronco Cyclone, being a left-handed boxer, breaking horses in Argentina, catching ponies in the Shetland Islands, riding in Buffalo Bill's and Pawnee Bill's Wild West shows, and having one of his own, going to Cuba with the Rough Riders to care for their horses, having his Mexico ranch seized by President Diaz, and breaking up a bank-robbing gang. Zero record of these endeavors was attributed to his using aliases. In reality, besides their absurdity, Sonneshan forgot Brushy was to be illiterate, so writing notes and being a lawman didn't float, was unaware that the Rough Riders had no horses in Cuba, and hid wildly lying Brushies, adding that he was catching the Shetland ponies for Queen Victoria, who entertained him. And historian Donald Klein, in his unpublished 1988 book Brushy Bill Roberts, I Wasn't Billy the Kid, stated that Brushy's family told him that Brushy had lived his whole life near or with family in Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and had never left the country.
Fable 21.
Historians are in a conspiracy to maintain status quo and hide that they were wrong.
For Brushy world, William V. Morrison and C.L. Sonneshan claimed conspiring historians in 1955's alias Billy the Kid. In reality, scholarly 20th century historians, busy discovering real Billy the Kid documents and writing books, dismissed the Brushy Bill hoax as ludicrous antics, not meriting their attention.
Fable 22.
New Mexico tourism conspires against Texan Brushy for financial reasons.
In Brushy world, tourism interests feared that Brushy would end the state's income, so abandoned him as Billy the Kid. In reality, New Mexico's Department of Tourism did nothing to stop corrupt New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson's 2003 Billy the Kid case hoax, which backed Brushy and intended to pardon him as Billy the Kid and give the iconic history to Texas.